Okay, so Planalix comes with two user interfaces, a web-based one called Workspace, which is what is on the screen at the moment, and then we also have a Excel add-in called Planalix for Excel. So we know that finance love Excel, so they can still interact and consume the data in Excel, update their plans, it inherits all the security and business rules in Excel. So you have the choice of the two front ends. I'm going to focus today on the web-based front end, but be rest assured, what I'm going to show you today can also be done in the Excel add-in. If you want to see the Excel interface as well, let me know. We can jump into that as well. So this is the welcome page for Planalix Workspace. You get a nice welcome message at the top. You can put your logos. You can put your logos at the top there. New users can play a video and see the capabilities of the platform. And then below there, we have what we call is My Application. So Planalix is what Gartner have coined is an FP&A platform, which stands for Extended Planning and Analysis, or the new term this year is Integrated Business Planning, but they're just fancy terms that mean that this tool will allow budget and forecasting across the enterprise. And so on here, I've got a number of different applications that will span the enterprise, and a lot of our clients will have 20 or 30 different applications, but we don't want to overwhelm the users with all those different applications. The screen will filter the applications based on the user's profile. So if I'm in the finance team, I'll see financial planning. If I'm in the corporate team, I'll see corporate planning. If I'm in supply chain, I'll see supply chain planning. If I'm in marketing, I'll see campaign planning, operational planning for the operation team, sustainability for the sustainability team, and so forth. But this screen will filter the applications based on the user's profile. So they're not overwhelmed with a number of different applications that are not relevant to their day-to-day job. And where it makes sense, these applications can be linked behind the scenes. So for example, campaign planning is linked to operational planning. So there's no point running a campaign to increase our demand if we're operationally at 100% capacity. We're just wasting our marketing dollars. So the applications can be linked behind the scenes. So what we're going to do is jump into a few of these applications just to give you a bit of a sense of the user experience and the key capabilities of the platform. As we do go through, please ask questions. Otherwise, it'll get a little bit boring if it's just me talking. But just jump in. I know it's hard on a remote session, but just jump in and ask questions when you need to. So what we're going to look at first is this application at the bottom here called Guided Planning. So this is an example of a bottom-up planning process. And so here we've infused some workflow capabilities, and we're going to look at some of the AI predictive forecasting capabilities that we've added to the platform as well. So on the left here, we have the name of the application, a brief description of what the application is doing. And then what we can do is break up the planning process into individual tasks and guide the user through their planning process. So in this example here, I've got three tasks the user needs to complete. So they need to do their revenue, their CapEx, and the OpEx. Each task will have or could have a different due date, and it will have one or more assets assigned to that particular task. So for example, if I jump into CapEx, it automatically loading my capital asset, and I can go and update my CapEx budgets and so forth from here. So we're guiding the user through their process. Once the user has completed their task, they can hit the submit button here. They can put some commentary or rich text around the submission. So numbers tell half the story, but they can complete the story and put some narrative in here and say, in this case, I've updated my revenue numbers in line with CPI, inflation, certain promotions that we're going to be running and so forth. I can put that in here. I can also upload any supporting documentation, be it a PDF, PowerPoint, Excel, Word document that will support my submission as well. When I hit submit, depending on how we've structured the workflow, it might go to my first line manager or regional manager. They'll get an email notification that says Kev's updated his revenue numbers. Please click on this link to approve or reject his submission. All right, so we'll go and update our revenue numbers. I'm going to minimize this navigation pane so we can see the screen a bit better. So the first screen we land on, and by the way, everything I'm going to show you today is highly customizable. So from the look and feel, from the colors, we can bring in your color templates, your corporate color template in here, and I can set up the visualization with your colors. The layout of these screens is 100% configurable. It's all drag and drop. One of the design intents of Workspace is self-service, so it's impossible for our clients to produce reports and budget templates that meet everyone's exact needs. So the ability for users to go in here and augment existing reports and create their own ones very, very easily is one of the design intents of this. There's no coding involved and so forth. So with that said, just put things in context. To build a dashboard like this took me about 10 minutes. So it's very quick and easy. So this screen here is designed to give the user a bit of an idea of how the organization is currently performing before they get to the demand planning tab and create their demand plan. So here I've got a summarized P&L view of the world. Obviously, we can drill up and drill down. I can drill down on my operating expenses and see what makes up that. And across the top, I've got my actuals, my budget, my variance percent, my status. So how do my actuals and budgets compare? And on the right here, we can filter this report. We've got a number of different filtering styles, depending on the available real estate and the user behavior we're trying to enforce as well. But here I've got effectively my region dimension. I can look at total company, Eastern region, Central, Western, and so forth. My widgets will update appropriately. Down below there, we've got some out-of-the-box visualizations. We're currently sitting around about 30 visualizations, and we're constantly adding to our visualization library. Workspace is on what we call a continuous delivery lifecycle. So there's a new version out every single month. So we're making sure that our customers are up to date with the latest look and feel and the front-end capabilities. From a SaaS capability, that's delivered automatically, high availability. It never goes down. You just come in on a Monday morning, you've got a new chart type or a new predictive algorithm. I forgot to mention in the beginning that Planning Analytics is available on-premise or as a SaaS offering. Out of every 10 deals we're doing at the moment, 9 will be SaaS. We're available on IBM Cloud, we're available on AWS, all hosted in Australia. Just this week, we got IRAP certification for Planning Analytics as a service in Australia. So it's all hosted here in Australia. The primary site will be in Sydney, and the disaster recovery site will be Melbourne. Okay. So the first visualization here is what we call our network diagram. It's designed to show the relationships within your data to your end users. So this demo here is based off an IT manufacturer like Apple. So in the middle, I've got their product categories, so tablets, phones, and PCs. On the outside, I've got the regions that we're selling through, and what we're looking at is the revenue numbers. So the darker the gray line, the more revenue I'm selling of that product category in that particular region. Next to that, I've got a bubble chart where I've got my products as bubbles based on units or volume and revenue across the bottom. So I can see what are my high volume selling products, which are my 3G smartphones, and I can see what my biggest revenue earners are, which are my 4G smartphones. So lower volume, better margins, and obviously a higher revenue. Obviously, we can drill in and interact with these visualizations as well and go down to individual SKU levels as well. Next to that, we've got what we call Mapbox integration. So let me expand it so that you can see it a bit better. But if we can represent your data geographically, it just helps the users understand what's going on. So one of our customers in Australia has got 961 stores across Australia. So we've got a map of Australia. They can see how each of the states are doing, and then they can drill down all the way down to a city level. So we can go down to an address level. And they've got each of their stores in the city, and then they can see how each ones are performing in relation to each other. In this example here, we're at a country level, and we can see Germany and France are doing okay. Spain and Portugal need a bit more assistance. Again, we're just trying to create an engaging user experience for our customers. On the next tab here is where we can start updating our demand plan. And so we're going to look at some of the write back capabilities in the tool. At the top, we've got a couple of different filters as well. I'll just quickly call these out. So the first one here is our what we call our drop-down filter. So here I can click on my product dimension, and I can run my demand plan for either at a total product level or at a product category level like phones, or I could drill all the way down to individual SKU levels as well. So this is our drop-down filter where we can kind of navigate the hierarchy and run our demand plan at whatever level we require. And then across the top, I've got what we call our slider bar. So I can just either look at total company or New South Wales or at a city level. So what we're going to do is update our demand plan for 2025 for Sydney, down to 12 months, down to 3 different channels, and we're going to do it at a total product level here. But so it's going to push it all the way down to our individual SKUs, and we've got about 100 SKUs under this particular hierarchy. The other thing we can do as well is obviously I can update my demand plan directly here, but what some of our customers like to do is do what we call a sandbox, which is a personalized kind of what if scenario where they can play around with the numbers, see the impacts, and when they're happy with those changes, they can then commit it back to the official demand plan. So to create a sandbox, all they need to do is come up to the top here, click on the spade icon, and then go create sandbox. And I can create a sandbox called my car, and then go create. And so now they're in a personalized version that's only visible to themselves, and so they can kind of play around, do some what if scenarios, sensitivity analysis, and then commit the numbers back to the official demand plan using this little tick button over here to commit it back. So I'll show you some of the write back capabilities, and then we'll look at some of the AI predictive capabilities. So a couple of things that we can do in here are things that we call like breakbacks or spreads. So where I want to change a whole lot of numbers very, very quickly. So for example, I want to change all of October by 10% down to my 3 different channels and my 100 SKUs. I can come in here and do a spread or a breakback, and I can go, actually, I want to increase by 10%. I can just type in there increase by 10%, and it's going to change the numbers proportionally based on what's there, based on 10%. And that's going to push all the numbers all the way down to individual SKUs. If I drill all the way down here and have a look, you can see that the numbers have flowed all the way down there. So we've changed around about 300 cells in less than a second. So the interface has been designed to enable quick write back and quick report generation. So you shouldn't be waiting more than a second or 2 for anything to generate or write back. This my current environment is our SaaS environment. And so it's the same software on-prem or as a SaaS offering, so it's the same functionality. My demo is actually hosted in US East. So this is the data has been written back to our data servers in Dallas. So just to give you an indication of the performance, so even if you've got people out in the field on their 4G networks, their performance is going to be really, really good. As I mentioned before, Planning Analytics is available in Australia, and that's where all our Australian customers are currently hosted. But you can see even from Sydney to Dallas that the performance is really, really good. Okay, so the other things we can do in here as well is I can apply holds. So I may want to change the whole of October, but I want to keep stores where they are. So I can right click on stores, go hold, and I can come at the highest level. This time I'll put a real number in here. I'll put 8K. That change will only get applied to online and wholesale. So it's not an all or nothing thing. I can actually pick which channels I want to update or don't want to update, or products or product categories and so forth. So there's a lot of flexibility with these breakbacks and spreads. The other thing we can do as well is if I release this hold, I can put a hold at the consolidated level at total channel, and I can go here, put a hold. And what I want to do is I'm going to increase stores, but there will be a bit of cannibalization of online and wholesale. So effectively, we're going to steal some of the customers from these channels and go to stores. So if I go and make this 1K, effectively, it's going to keep my total at 8K, but it's going to decrease my online and wholesale. So there's a lot of flexibility and control using these spreads to make it easy for you to update your plans. All right, let me release these holds. We've added a number of shortcut keys to help the users update their plans. So for example, if I want to make wholesale from March 2,500 for the remainder of the year, I can just do 2,500 to the right. It's going to go and update 10 months down to 100 products, so about 1,000 cells in less than a second. The other thing we noticed is that people would use a calculator or a spreadsheet to work out the value to put back into Planning Analytics. So what we allow users to do now is use formulas to update these cells. So for example, in February for wholesale, I want to sell 200 units for every day in February, so 200 times 28. The result of that formula will get written back to that cell. Obviously, we can do plus, minus, divide, and so forth as well in them. Or I can get a bit more sophisticated and go, actually, I want to start at $2,100 in January, and I want to grow by 10% per month. So if I type that in there, it will do effectively a 10% month-on-month increase, effectively a straight line. You can see that from the spark line as well. We can apply different profiles to your data as well. For expenses, we can apply a 4-5 week profile. Construction companies like S-curves, but we can apply different profiles to the data to help the user, when they're updating their plans rather than updating individual cells. The other thing we can do as well is I've got 3 years of historical data, so 22, 23, and 24. I can use that historical data to predict what my demand plan is going to look like in 2025. So to do that, the user can choose which channels they want to run a predictive forecast on. I'm going to run it on all 3. Why is my shift key not working? Here we go. So you just highlight the lines that you want to run a predictive forecast on. You come to the top right here and click on the forecast icon. The user gets presented with 2 predictive forecasting methods, univariate and multivariate. I'll show you univariate first, and then we'll have a look at multivariate in a couple of minutes. So when I click on univariate, it loads the univariate forecast wizard on the right. I tell it when I want to forecast from and to. I actually want to forecast from January 25 out to December 25. On the advanced tab, I can deselect any historical time periods that may throw my prediction off. So I might want to exclude COVID years or something like that. And the other thing we can do as well is enter an acceptable range. So there's only, in this case, as an IT manufacturer, they've got constraints around raw materials and how much they can actually physically produce in a particular time period. So we can enter that range in here. So there's no point predicting, a demand higher than we can actually manufacture. So we can set that acceptable range in here as well. When I run preview, what the system is going to do is going to run 9 exponential smoothing algorithms across each of the channels. It's going to identify the seasonality and trend in each channel and picks the most appropriate predictive algorithm out of the 9 that best fits that seasonality and trend to give us the most accurate forecast. So at the moment on the screen, I've got stores, but I've got all 3 listed here based on what I selected on the previous screen. But for stores, the fixed line here are my actuals. The dashed line here is my demand plan or my predicted demand plan. And then the shaded area is my confidence range. So how confident is the system in its prediction? So it's not, predictive forecasting is not magic fairy dust. It's not always going to give you 100% accurate results all the time. It's got a lot to do with the quality of the data and the granularity of the data. So it's very important that we inform your users. Can they trust this information, or should they use their own business insights in forecasting these numbers out? On the statistical detail tab, this tab's designed to give the user a bit more information on how these numbers were generated, to help with the trustworthiness and explainability around these numbers. So it'll go into the predictive accuracy. It will tell the user what model was selected. So a exponential smoothing model was selected. The trend that was detected was additive. The seasonality is additive. So the specific model it's selected is the additive Holt-Winters method. And on the left here, it's got all the measures and parameters that we use to derive these numbers. The user can hover over each of these parameters and measures, and it'll explain what they're doing. But what we've done recently as well is we're running Gen AI across this to give a more business-friendly explanation of what these measures, what a map here is, what a maze is, which is being produced here on the right. So we're trying to make data science a bit more explainable to a business user using Gen AI capabilities. So it's going to explain, the Holt-Winters method that was used, and what the map is, what the maze is, and so forth, to help the user understand how these numbers are being generated. All right. The other thing the system will do as well, if we jump into online, it will detect any outliers in your historical data. So for online in December, there's an outlier indicated by this red square. And what we can do is correct that outlier to give us a far more accurate forecast moving forward if we wish. So I can come up to the top right here and adjust this outlier. And what the system will do is automatically smooth out that outlier. It's going to move it from this blue dot down to this green dot. So this is the pattern expected to see over time. And then it's going to, you can see from the narrow confidence range there, it's going to give us a far more accurate forecast moving forward. So not only will the system automatically pick the right algorithm, but it'll also give you suggestions on how to correct your historical data to produce a far more accurate prediction moving forward. I'll quickly show you wholesale as well, just to show you the importance of that confidence range. You can see in this example here, it's super wide. And effectively, it's indicating that the system cannot detect any seasonality or trend in the historical data. So effectively, it's just doing a straight line from the last actual month. So it's very important that we inform the users that, hey, you should trust these numbers with a bit of pinch of salt, because effectively we can't actually detect any seasonality or trend to be able to provide an accurate prediction on this. So that's why we have that confidence range there. All right, so if I come out of this now and I come and hit the forecast button at the bottom right, it will go and take those preview numbers and seed that into my demand plan. A couple of seconds. There we are. So the intent around the predictive forecasting is twofold. One is to improve the forecast accuracy, and secondly, to improve the time it takes to take to create the forecast. So that's just generated me a demand plan for 12 months down to 3 channels to 100 SKUs. Once the numbers are in here, I can augment these numbers as things change, or if I run a promotion or we run out of stock and so forth, I can go in here and augment these numbers. So for example, we're predicting on selling 1,469 units in January for online. I'm going to be running a promotion in that month. I expect to sell 2,000. So I can come in here and overwrite that number and as things change over time. Okay, so that's univariate. Let me show you multivariant. I've got a different example for multivariant. Let me click on this one here. So univariant is looking at just one variant, time, and it's looking at seasonality and trend over time. However, there may be other factors that may influence, in this case, your demand plan. So in this example here, I've got how many business days are there in the month, how much consumer spending or how much disposable income do our clients have, which will be an all-time low at the moment in Australia with the cost of living crisis, although that is improving with the lower interest rates. We can bring in inflation, we can bring in unemployment, I can bring in weather data, temperature, precipitation, commodity prices, population growth, whatever it may be, depending on the industry. I can bring in those factors, and I can feed that into my prediction. So what I'll do is I'll run a demand plan for 5G 32 gigabyte phones. I'll come up here and I'll run a multivariate, and I'll show you what it's doing slightly different in here. I still tell it when I want to forecast from and to, but at the bottom here, I've got a new section where I can now start pointing to these different variables or factors. So at the moment, I've got consumer spending selected and I've got unemployment selected. I can go in there and I can point to different factors. So I can go and look at number of business days or inflation rates or whatever it may be as well. And so we can have up to 3 of these different factors in here as well. When I run preview, I'll show you what it's doing slightly different in here as well. I quickly jump to the statistical detail tab. There's a new section on the right here called relative contribution, and it's going to tell the end user out of the variables they've selected, it's going to tell the user which ones are actually contributing to, in this case, the predictive strength for the demand plan. So we can see here consumer spending, or how much disposable income our clients have, has a low contribution at less than 5% at 4.9. However, unemployment has a strong contribution to the predictive strength at 95.1%. So effectively what I've clicked on is what we would class as an essentials item. So if someone's employed and they've got money, they're going to purchase this product. If they're unemployed and got no money, they're obviously not going to purchase the product. Doesn't matter how much disposable income our customers have, it doesn't influence the demand for this product. So it's not a luxury item like a Louis Vuitton bag. It's more like an essentials item like milk, butter, bread, and so forth. I'll quickly pause there for a second, see if there are any questions around that. Cool. All right. So what we're going to look at now is so we call this more traditional AI, and now what we're going to look at is the more modern AI, where we got chatbots and more Gen AI capabilities. And as I mentioned before, this is the part that does require the AI or the Planning Analytics AI add-on license. Let me just jump into. Sorry, I just got to log in here quickly. So single sign-on is available. So you can see when I've logged in, it's pushing me back to the IBM identity provider to do single sign-on. So I'm just going to log in with my world's longest password. So if you've got multi-factor authentication, all that sort of stuff, we'll inherit it from your identity provider and so forth. But you only have to remember one password. It would just be my car password. You have to remember other passwords for Planning Analytics. So once I'm authenticated, it'll bring me back into Planning Analytics. I'm just going to open up this dashboard here. So this is what a typical dashboard may look like in Planning Analytics. And what we've done is we've added the Planning Analytics assistant at the top right here. So if I click on that, it'll load it there on the right. So this is built off our Watson X assistant technology. But what we've done is we've trained it up on Planning Analytics. So it understands what a database is, what a cube is, a dimension, a hierarchy, a business rule. So there's zero code involved. You just point it at your models and off you go. The primary design intent of the assistant was to lower the barriers of adoption. We realized that not everyone uses Planning Analytics on a day-to-day basis, and they forget what they can do within the platform. They forget what the icons do. They forget what the menus do and so forth. And so this is designed to give them a more natural language experience. They can just tell the system what they want it to do rather than trying to figure out what the menus and icons do and so forth. When you load the assistant, it's got some commonly asked questions. The most common one is help. So the assistant is on the same delivery lifecycle as Workspace. So there's a new version out every single month, and we're adding more and more capabilities to this assistant. At the moment, we can open up a cube. I can explore. I can slice and dice, drill up, drill down, hide members, keep members. I can create sandboxes on the fly. So earlier you saw me click on the spade icon, then go to create sandbox, give it a name called my car, and then go OK. In here now, I can just go in and say create sandbox, call it my car, and hit enter. I don't have to remember that I have to click on the spade icon as a novice user. I can create charts of visualizations on the fly. I can create calculations. So these are view calculations. So I can sum up the rows, get the average of the columns and so forth. There is a very sophisticated business rule engine behind the system. This assistant's designed to write view calculations, not the back end calculations. And then yeah, you can do copy, undo, and so forth, but let's give you a bit of a demo of what we can do. So you can click on any widget within the dashboard, and I can go in here. And what I want to do is slice and dice. I want to swap my rows and columns around. So there is an icon that allows you to do that. I could use the mouse, but as a novice user, I forget how to do those things. So I can just come in here and type the word swap or flip, and it will swap my rows and columns around. So I can slice and dice. Or I actually can go back the way I want it. Previously, I can just do an undo. Or what I want to do is convert that table into a pie chart. I can just come in here and say, switch to pie chart. And that will go convert that table into a pie chart. Previously, the user would have to go to the visualization menu, select pie chart, configure it, and OK. Here they can just go switch it to pie chart. Next, what we've done is added Gen AI capabilities, so to generate insights in your data. And the first one we've done is what we call chart insights. So there is a natural human bias interpreting data and visualizations, and what we're using is Gen AI to take that bias and just give you the plain facts and what it and the observations it sees in these visualizations. So to do that, they can go just type in here, show me insights, and this is going to give me a natural language explanation of what's going on in this visualization, give me a bit of introduction, an analysis of what it's finding, and then down at the bottom it's going to give me a bit of a conclusion. I can copy this text, I can put it back in the dashboard, I can put it back in my model in a PDF or Word file. If I jump into the key points, I find this tab a bit more it gives you a bit more information of what's going on. So it'll give you the key stats, any trend analysis that it takes, any notable observations that we want to call out to the end user's attention, any insights it's getting from this data. So we're using this to help the users quickly find insights and any trends and notable observations that rather than them hunting around trying to find it, we're trying to bring that to the user's attention very, very quickly. So the other thing we've done as well is from a table point of view, is calling out first off, are there any outliers in my data? So at a first glance, it's quite difficult to see if there's any outliers without going through each individual cell. In here, I can just go analyze. I think it's analyze here. No, actually, I want to do show me outliers. And what it's going to do is going to go scan. I'm looking actually my income statement, and it's going to go through each row and highlight to the end user where the outliers are. So for example, for gross revenue, there's an outlier here in March, and down at the bottom here, I'll give you a bit of a synopsis of how many outliers it detected, what were the extreme values, any patterns it detected, and the implications of these particular outliers are. We can get the system to automatically correct these outliers if you wish by just toggling that on, but it will just go through each of the lines and identify any outliers that we need to bring to the user's attention, rather than them reading each line and so forth and just calling it out for the end user. So the other thing we've done as well is showing the we call it impact analysis, but it's showing you the relationships within your data. So if I change my price, that's going to impact, what is that going to impact? And that's obviously going to impact my volume and sales and so forth. But we're using AI to uncover those relationships. And to see that, you can come in here and just type in analyze, this. And this is going to bring up, actually, let me just do impact analysis. Bring up our impact analysis. And on this case, it's on our income statement. So I apologize, the relationships are going to be pretty obvious, but you'll get the idea. But so it's showing me effectively my income statement, and I can click on each of my lines. So for example, if I click on here, gross margin. So in this chart, showing me the axis of direct and indirect impact that it has on other members. So for example, gross margin is being influenced by 37% based on that gross revenue, which is obvious, and net profit at 29%, cost of sales, net profit after allocations. But it's showing you the indirect and direct relationships within your data. And calling that out. So if I make a change here, it's going to impact that, and so forth. And it'll give you a bit of a synopsis down here at the bottom of the direct and indirect comparisons and so forth, and the relationships within your data. And then what we can do as well from there is I can run a report, so an exploration analysis, which basically takes all that information, creates me a PDF, an exact summary, and so forth, and kind of sums all that information up for the end user. Just go up to the top here. Come on, here we go. So that will go and create me a report, on this case on my income statement. It give me a bit of an exec summary, the relationships and dependencies, anomalies and outliers, analysis overview, recommendations, and then starts going through the detailed information of my impact analysis, showing me what's contributing to my gross margin and so forth. And it will go through and produce this document. So the idea of this is the user doesn't have to go and slice and dice in their income statement cube to identify all this information. We're trying to bring it immediately to the end user's attention. But where, as you mentioned before, where we're going to be going next with this is the ability to ask it questions rather than just produce a report, be a bit more targeted on, hey, what's driving my revenue, or what's causing my revenue decline in the fourth quarter, and blah, blah, blah. And it will automatically call out that information for you. And then you can start then analyzing that data. All right, let me come out of this. So the other thing we've done as well is if I go into so to basically to build up these dashboards and reports and so forth, the user has to go effectively into the database behind the scenes. Sorry, I've got a lot of databases here. Most customers just have one, but if I go into my smart code model, which is the one we're using at the moment, the data is structured in a series of cubes behind the scenes. Compensation has been calculated in my compensation cube, depreciation is in my depreciation cube. I've got my exchange rates coming through, income statement, revenue. So there's a series of cubes. This is what Octane will come in and build for you based on your requirements. And what the user can do is come in here and, I want to look at revenue numbers. So I can go in here and there'll be what we call predefined views that we've created, the administrator would create, and then the user can use those or create their own ones as well, but they can just right click on them and add them to the dashboard, and they can slice and dice and they can do whatever they want with them. What we've done recently is added Gen AI to build these views for the user, so they don't have to go into the back end. So a lot of our clients may have 30, 40 or 50 different cubes, and it can take them a bit of a while to work out where the information is within the models. So what we're doing now is, if I do the same thing, but if I come out of this and just delete this particular view, I can come up here and go into Data Explorer. Again, I've got so many servers, it's going to ask me which one I want to look at, but I'm going to look at my smart code one. And I can ask it a natural language question, and it will automatically scan my cubes and build me a view and explain why it built that view that way. So I can go in here and go, show me revenue performance for 2015. This model is super old, it hasn't been updated in a while. So I'm going to run it for 2015. So it's going to go and scan my cubes. It's going to find the cubes that's got the most relevant data, and then build me a view on the right that best answers that question. So it's picked up, it's building the view from my revenue cube. So this is the view that it's recommended. And then down below here, you can see it's picked 2014. It's showing my number of units, and it's showing me by quarter. And then it's going to explain at the bottom of why it's built it that way. And so once that view's there, I can slice and dice, and I can put it in each way I want, and I can add it to my dashboard using the insert view link there. And then it also gives me alternative cubes where it's found some revenue information as well. So I can go, actually there's some revenue data in my income statement cube. I can click on that, and it's going to go and build me a view on my income statement cube to show me my 2015 revenue data. So you can see here, it's picked up 2015. It's picked up my account called gross revenue, and it's built the view again at a quarter level. Obviously, I can drill down into individual months levels as well, and then I can just insert that into my dashboard. So instead of the user going into the back end database and trying to find the cube and so forth, we're trying to simplify that and make it easier for the user, and they can just ask the question, and the system will then go, right, these are the cubes you need to look at. These are the views I've built for you. This is why I built it this way. And then I could put it on here. And then from once it's on here, I can slice and dice, or I could go, actually, I want to convert it into a bar chart. I can just go switch switch to biochart. And that will go and convert that table into a bar chart. So the other thing we've done as well fairly recently is, if I jump back to here and reset this dashboard, is everywhere within Planning Analytics, you can right click on the cell and find out how it's being calculated. So if I'm at a consolidated member, like total products, it will show me the individual SKUs that make up that total number. If I've clicked on a cell that's been calculated on a business rule, so let's say it's, you know, sales equals price times units, it will show me what the sales value has been calculated. It will show me the business rule that's been used to generate that sales figure, and it will show me the price in units that make up that sales figure. So I'll quickly show you here. So if I got gross revenue here, and I'm clicking on the variance column, I've got a variance of negative 34 million. I can right click on that and I can trace that cell, and it'll tell me exactly how it's been calculated. So you can see that it's, you know, calculating a negative 34 million. It's based off a variance calculation off here to the right. And I'm looking at my actuals, which is 73 million, and I'm comparing it against a scenario or version called version 1 that's got 108 million, and that's how I'm getting my negative 34 million, which is great. It gives the users you know, lineage into the data. It gives them explainability, and it helps them, well, it gives them confidence in the numbers. Now, Planning Analytics loves complex calculations. So it's not a complex solution. It just likes it. It can handle very complex calculations, which is really important when you start looking at budget and forecasting across the enterprise, because different areas budget and forecast slightly different. So you're going to have very specific business rules for different lines of business, and they can get very complex. That's why a lot of the major banks, insurance companies, and retailers love Planning Analytics, because it loves complex calculations. The problem with that is when you start exposing these rules to the end users, it can get very complicated for the user to understand how it's been calculated. So for example, if I expand this variance calculation, you'll see it's very complex. It's not just actual minus budget. It's actually a very complex calculation. And actually what the customer wanted to do in this case was they wanted a dynamic variance calculation. So first they wanted to have a different calculation depending on where they are within the calendar year. So for the first 9 months, they want actual minus budget. For the last 9 months, they want actual minus forecast. And then also revenue numbers are naturally stored in your source systems as a negative number, and we bring them into Planning Analytics as a negative number. But from a variance calculation, a lot of customers want to swap the sign around to give them the right variance calculation. So what this is doing is scanning your chart of account dimension, and if it picks up a revenue account, it switches the sign. If it's an expense account, it uses the natural sign. So you get the right calculation no matter what you're looking at, revenue or expense accounts. But you can see that this rule is very complex, and it's going to take a business, well, I don't think a business user will actually be able to understand what's being done here. And even for a Planning Analytics developer, it will take them a few minutes to work out what's going on here. So what we've done is we're running Gen AI across this to give a more business-friendly explanation of what's being calculated, or how is it being calculated. So if I do the same thing again, but do explain cell with AI, it's going to give me the same information, the same values, the same calculation, but it's going to generate me on the right here a summary, a business-friendly explanation of what is actually happening in this rule. So it'll give you the purpose of this rule. And if it's got we did a POC the other day where we did MPV, IRR, CACs, and so forth. It actually goes off and then goes, so you do an MPV, which stands for net present value. This is what the calculation is doing. It's using these discount rates and so forth. So it gives a user a very business-friendly explanation of how it's been calculated. First, what is an MPV calculation? And then how is the system generating that information? In this case, it's gone out and it's breaking up the variance calculation into its individual components. But here we can see there's an if function that's looking at an attribute called switch sign, which is looking at my account dimension. So depending on the account, how does it switch that sign? And then the second part of the calculation is looking at a compare against calendar cube to work out which version it needs to compare against. And then at the bottom, It's going to give you a bit of a summary of what this rule is doing. And then what I can do is add this add this explanation to a comment in that cell. So I can click add that to a comment, and it will write it to the cell. And I'll show you when we get to the front end what that looks like in a few moments. And then it gives you useful links as well to the Planning Analytics documentation of the specific functions that are being used in this calculation. So they can click on each of these and it will take them to the help file and explain what the ATTRN function is doing and so forth. So we're trying to take, everyone's business is complex, and we're trying to make it easier for the users to understand how these things are being calculated, why it's being calculated this way, and basically give them confidence in the numbers. The next thing we're going to be doing around this as well is there's a full transaction log in Planning Analytics. So we store what the old value was, what the new value. So if someone updated the value, we can see what the old value is, the new value, who made that change, when they made that change, where did they make that change. We're now going to expose that in this window as well. So not only will we be able to tell the user how is it being calculated, but we'll be able to tell them how has it changed over time. So in this case, we could say, Bob, you'll be able to see that Bob changed version 1 on this day from this to this. So telling a story to the user, not only how it's been calculated, but how has the numbers changed over time, and giving them that kind of transparency into that kind of transactions that are happening behind the scenes. If I jump back to here, you'll see that we've got a little blue square that's indicating that there's been a comment added to that cell. So I can right click on that, view that comment. I've done this a number of times, but basically it's put that explanation as a comment. It's something I haven't showed you today, but you can write comments at a cell level, so what we call cell annotations, but I can put my own comments in here as well and just go, hello and bye and so forth. So you can do very similar to Excel cell annotations with the red triangle. We can add comments in here as well, and have the full history of the comments. If I go in here, you'll see my comment I made, the value, and it will tell you, it will store the value at that point in time as well. So when I made the comment, it was negative 34 million. But if the value had changed and I put a comment, it will show me the new value and the comment at that point in time. We can also put comments in the cell itself, so we can have a comment field within the table. So you can put comments wherever you want within the system to meet your requirements. So the next evolution of this kind of AI component is bringing it into more of the back end to help with generating the business rules. So you can see it can explain and interpret the business rules. The next evolution will begin it to write the business rules for the end users. So what our goal with the system, with Planning Analytics there's a lot of reliance on developers to build the rules and do everything. We're trying to move that away from developers to more of a power user analyst role. So we'll be building, putting in, formula builders, calculation editors, using AI and code assist to build some of the calculations and so forth. So end users will be able to do a lot more within the platform. So that's what I wanted to show you today. I'll pause there, see if we've got any questions. Is there anything, that I could obviously go all day on this. Is there anything that I haven't shown that you do need to see today, or anything else?